Fast, simple, and scalable. That's what your back end needs to look like if you want to scale a successful online coaching business. So what I'm going to show you in this video is exactly how I operate, how I take clients from A to B, from the point that they pay to the point of them actually getting results. So, you can get as many leads and calls as you want and close new clients, but if you can't actually retain them and get them results, then your business is going to die. So if you're a PT or someone who is kind of sort of new to online coaching, or maybe you're already online coaching, but you just want some new insights and then to see how other people do it, then I'm going to show you everything in this video. So let's start at the high level overview, right? You need a simple structure that is repeatable, that you do every single time with every client. So it all starts with onboarding. That's your first impression. And the difference is, if you make a really good impression in the first 2 weeks, you're going to set them up with a good perception of what your online coaching is and the value of it. If you mess up the onboarding, then you're going to be swimming upstream the whole time to retain them because the first impression was shit, to be blunt about it. So the onboarding is typically, the sort of first 7 to 14 days. I consider it the first 14 days because you're really, you want to really set them up for success and really kind of indoctrinate them into your program in a structured way. And then you've got kind of the high level, right? It's the roadmap, what they're doing on a monthly basis, where they're trying to go, what their vision is, and how you actually get them right in stages from them joining to the end outcome. Right, you're not trying to just throw everything at them right from the get-go. It needs to be structured. They need to know exactly what the next steps are, where it is they're looking to go, and so forth. And then you've got the weekly check-ins, right, which is your weekly pulse check, which is you checking on their progress, managing where they are and their personal circumstances, and then making sure that they have complete clarity going into the next week. And then you've got touchpoints, right, which is an even more micro level, which is what happens in between the check-ins, right, and who actually needs them and how many touchpoints do they need, because everyone's different, right? It's not a one size fits all. So before we dive into these, let's just quickly cover like the software stack of what you actually need to actually fulfill on this. So optional up here, right, is Zapier. This is like, if you're just starting online coaching, then you don't need to worry about this. It's more of a nice to have, not a need to have, but it can really help you when you start getting a lot of clients. You can start to automate a lot of like the onboarding side of things. Then you've got Loom, which is your screen recorder, right? This is typically how you'll do check-ins. And if you wanted to go a step further, you might have sort of like teaching modules inside your program. So you would, craft that, screen record it, and then put it into software like School or Circle, something like that. Then we've got WhatsApp, right, for client communication. This is what I prefer personally, but some people use Slack as well. If you kind of, let's say, use WhatsApp personally and you kind of want to separate it and you want to keep everything in its own sort of platform, then Slack is a really good one. You can have like different channels and things like that, but for simplicity's sake, communicating on a one-to-one level with your clients on WhatsApp, and then maybe having like a group channel where you basically have everyone, so you can, make announcements and things like that. Then you've got Google Drive, which is for any kind of file storage, keeping yourself organized. Because again, things do get chaotic, when you get into the weeds things, and you as a business owner need to be organized, and you need to be able to have that high level overview of what's going on. Then you've got your training app. So personally, I like OneFit, very popular in the UK. However, a lot of my clients do use like Trainerize, Everfit, and things like that. Truthfully, they all do the same job, and it really does come down to your needs and what you gel with the most. But OneFit, I've used that as a coach, and I've used that on the client side as well. So I know how it works in both circumstances, and in both situations, I really like it. And then you've got Zoom for your video calls, right? That's kind of the simple software stack you need. You don't need to overcomplicate it. You just need the bare minimum in place to actually fulfill on your clients. Because at the end of the day, they're not paying you for fancy software. They're paying you to get the result, right? So it just needs to do the job. So let's dive into, actually, let's go here first. So this is what I call the client OS. OS meaning operating system. So when a client comes on board, it's all good. You know what's going on. You can remember everything and it's fine. When you have 20 clients on board and you're trying to juggle your clients' lives and your own life, things can get very messy. So what you need is one asset that manages the progress and the information of all the clients that you're working with. And, just an example of Zapier here. You can set it up so when you get a new payment, like when someone comes on board for the first time, it can automatically input client email, WhatsApp, Instagram, not really too necessary, initial payment, start date, and then you just kind of need to fill in the rest. Things like risk level. Typically, I always have every new client starting on red, just as standard. Like, I don't care if they're a complete beginner or if they're someone who already has a lot of experience and I know they're going to put in the work. Like, everyone just starts off on red. And I'll kind of dive into what that means a bit later. You can even automate goals as well. So you'll probably have like an onboarding form, which you'll have questions in there relating to goals, and you can actually set up an automation that automatically would like the trigger would be them submitting the form, and then you can take the goals question and have it automatically in there. So by doing this every day, you can come into here and you can just do a bit of cleanup, a bit of tidying, and make sure that everything is up to date. Things like when you last contacted them, maybe the summary of your last coaching call with them, any notes, right? So they might have events coming up. They might have some personal circumstances that you need to be aware of. Everything is housed here, right? Their end date, right? So when you're a month before their renewal, you can be aware of this and you can have a plan of action to map out the next few months and actually get them over that line, right? And back into renewing the program. Testimonials. Have you collected all the revenue? What is the total revenue? Like, all this sort of stuff is just important for you to know. And when you've got 20 clients, and then you can just go on this asset and just see at high level what's going on, it just keeps your brain very organized. So this is the number one client fulfillment asset that you're going to need to use in your program. And if you want me to just send you this, just DM me clients on Instagram. The link to my profile will be below, and I'll just send you this over. It's no problem. So let's go into how to actually start off, right? So it all starts from onboarding. This is so fucking important. A lot of the time, if you make a really good impression here, that can literally be the thing that keeps them in your program for a long time. Because if you create a bad impression, it's a lot harder to come back from that and then turn it into a good impression than it is to first create a good impression and then maybe one or two things don't go the way they want it to, but because you already have their brain subconsciously leaning in seeing your program in a positive light, they'll be a lot more forgiving towards anything that may go wrong. So you have to nail onboarding. And the whole point of onboarding is to make sure that they have an exact step-by-step mini blueprint, right? A little 2-week game plan to get them to that point of not really knowing what's going on, maybe being new to online coaching, getting them to the point where they're comfortable, they know what's going on, they're in a good rhythm, they've had some quick wins, right? Their confidence is in a good place. So what you're trying to do is just make that little 2-week period as good as it can be to get them to that point. And then what you'll find is if you have them in a good rhythm and you ease them into it well, they'll be a much better client and you'll have to do a lot less work, right? This does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So if you look down here, right, this is kind of like the timeline. So initially 5 minutes after you get off the sales call, 1 hour to get them actually everything that they need to get going, like their training plan, their protocols, all this sort of stuff. And then it's like on a once a week basis, you're literally just doing the check-in, and optionally you might be doing like a group call as well when you have, say, more than like 10 clients and it's actually worth your time. And then once a month, this is where you take a step back, you look at the situation from a high level, make sure that everything is aligned still to what they actually want and what they're working towards, and also just to kind of future pace a little bit, right? To map out the next few months, because people want clarity, they want simplicity, they want to be excited about what's to come. And this is how you're basically engineering momentum inside your program. Because if all you do is create them a training plan, nutrition plan, and then do the check-ins, and yeah, they might have like set some initial goals at the start, but what happens is as time goes on, those sort of goals and like motivational drivers that got them in the first place will slowly start to fade if you're not bringing it to surface on a regular basis to keep them motivated and like driven. So it's just something you've got to manage, right? Let's say they first join your program, their motivation is up here, and then naturally just over time, as the novelty starts to fade, it'll start to like dwindle a little bit. Things will pop up, they'll forget why they're doing this in the first place. So it's your job to, right, manage that, to bring it back to surface. So it's more like this. And then also you've got this like North Star over here. So let's say this is like the length of time of your program. You're always managing this sort of North Star over here, which always goes beyond, which makes it really easy for then you to capitalize on the renewal, which is here, because they're already excited about what's to come. So with that being said, what does an onboarding like typically look like? We're not trying to do anything really fancy here. Like if you're fairly new to online coaching, what you need is a minimum viable product. I speak to so many people who are like trying to build the perfect program. And the reality is the perfect program doesn't exist. And it really comes down to who you're actually coaching. And you need to be making data-driven decisions. So what you just need is the minimum in place to get them from A to B. And then what you do is over time, you collect client feedback, right? Whether it's from sort of your review calls, you can set up some like questionnaire before they actually hop on the call with you. Obviously, their weekly check-ins is a pulse check for you to see where their head's at with things. So you're taking this feedback about your program as well, and then you're using that feedback to build it in the right places, make sure that you're actually building things they actually care about. Some people come to me, like I spoke to one guy who came on board, but I was talking to him for like 3 months, and he was just the whole 3 months, he was still building his program. And I was like, dude, you're wasting so much time here. Like when people come on board, literally you can map all this out and get it into place within like 72 hours. And he was looking into buying his own custom built app and all this sort of stuff. And realistically, no one cares about that. What they're buying into you as a coach. They just want you to be there with them to support them on the journey, to make sure that they're doing everything right. And that's literally what matters. When we take that into consideration, just see about that. So client signs, and then immediately they need to know what to do next, right? If they pay you, then you go off the call and they're just waiting, twiddling their thumbs, wondering what's next. That's not good. That's going to bring up sales resistance, all those negative emotions, the doubt, the uncertainty, wondering if they made the right decision or not. That happens right here. Okay. So it's important that you eliminate that, right? And make sure you're getting them to their first wins as quickly as possible. They know exactly what to do next, right? You've got a welcome email that tells them their steps. Ideally, a bit of homework to do, right? Keep their brain ticking. You're collecting data, right? So that you're in the best position possible to craft them the perfect protocol to get them through the first couple months. Really, at the start, you're just trying to build a foundation of consistency, quick wins, and confidence, right? You're not trying to fucking change their whole life within like 1 month, right? You're just trying to settle them into the program. And ideally, you would have like a community as well. A community, right, is huge. This is where identity shift really happens. And it's why I love online programs as opposed to like personal training, because personal training is very, very one-to-one. Yeah, it's tailored, but it's a bit isolated. It's just you on your journey with your personal trainer. And when you're not in the actual session with them, there can be a bit of a disconnect. Whereas an online program that is tailored towards a specific target audience where everyone is on the same journey, it's like the need to have the coach there coaching you all the time almost becomes like not necessary, because you're vibing with people who are on a similar journey. They're like-minded, and you become a part of this community. And then it's almost like a sheep mentality, but in a way that actually constructively builds you up, builds your character. And like ingrains the beliefs in you, right? People who are above you, who are more successful than you, you're looking up to them, you're getting advice from them. And that's what actually creates the identity shift in your clients. So they actually want to see this through and make it happen. So by you getting all this out of the way, right, just getting them indoctrinated into the program as quickly as possible, and it's like boom, 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 here's what you got to do. It's keeping their brain ticking, which then gives you a little window to do this part, which is actually making their custom program. However, if you're targeting the same kind of people, you should just have some generic programs made up. And then what you can do is you can use what they said in the onboarding survey to make small tweaks, which just makes it a lot more scalable. And, they get invited into this custom app, which it does feel personal, right? You don't need to build your own app. A lot of these apps like Trainerize, OneFit, it's already an exclusive private app where they get their own dashboard and stuff. That's enough. People don't really give a shit about branding and stuff. And then you get them onto the kickoff call, and you need to make a fucking world-class impression on this kickoff call. Like, you need to get them fucking hyped for what's to come. So you're setting goals, you're walking them through the plan, you're reassuring them about, literally, you're just putting it out there on the table. Look, man, like, here's exactly what to do. It's easy, right? I'm not throwing you in the deep end here. These are the only things you need to worry about. And if you do that, then it's a successful week. So people operate best with clarity. So if you can make everything you need them to do crystal fucking clear, you're going to put yourself in a better position. And that something else you can put in the welcome email is like a little welcome pack that really sets the expectations about what, being a good client looks like, how to do check-ins, what to expect, what is their role on a weekly basis, and how, in your eyes, what does good look like? That's super important. They need to know what good looks like, because everyone has a different perception of it. And especially if they're new to online coaching, they're not going to have a clue what good looks like, right? So you need to set expectations right from the get-go. And by you doing this well in the first 2 weeks, the rest of the program is going to be super simple for them, right? Because you're going to build momentum. They're going to know exactly what to do, and they're going to know they're on track. Obviously the training plan, right? Kickoff call to walk them through everything after you've, made the plan, assigned calories, macros, however you want to do it. You might want to give them a meal plan. Most of these apps are very flexible. So whether you want to go down the calorie counting route, I know OneFit, like, you can connect MyFitnessPal to it, or you can have set meal plans as well. It all really depends on the client. My personal preference is counting calories because it gives them more flexibility, and it actually teaches them a skill, as opposed to just following a meal plan blindly, not really knowing, like, okay, if I can't have this one day, what are the alternatives? So you want to be teaching a lifelong skill, right, that they will always have. And then obviously the learning modules, which is a extra. And this is what I mean by, like, perfectionism. If you just try and make the perfect program without any real data, you're only just using what's in your head. And your mindset is very different to someone who is new to coaching, who doesn't have the experience you have. And because of that disconnect, you don't really truly know what's important to them unless you have a lot of coaching experience. So what happens is you'll get a lot of questions. If you have questions that pop up like more than 3 times, then that should absolutely be documented and made into a video, a resource that people can access. And if you have resources, this is just another thing that people can be getting stuck into when they first come on board, right, to keep their mind activated. And then from there, right, this should not take you long at all, especially if you've got it all systemized, right? You might want to automate a lot of this stuff. Email gets sent automatically with the onboarding survey. You might have an onboarding funnel like what I do, where, like, literally as soon as they pay, they get redirected to a page that walks them through. It has like a welcome video. It walks them through, signing the agreement. It walks them through filling out the survey. It walks them through booking their kickoff call. And it just means that they get all this boring stuff out the way literally within the first 10 minutes, as opposed to you having to chase them up about it. So after this is out the way, right, now it's literally a case of managing them. All right. They should know how to do a check-in. They should know when they have to do it. and it'll all be done within inside the app. Okay. So a 15-minute check-in, which is where you review their data, any questions that they have, and then you deliver it, right? What adjustments need made and all this sort of stuff. Then you might have a group call as well, right? Which is just an extra way to get more of your attention, where it's like you're talking to a lot of people one time, so it's very leveraged and scalable that way. And then you don't want to just make it feel like indefinite weekly check-ins. You need this high-level overview. Kind of like in business, right? Where you'd have like quarterly meetings, monthly meetings, where it's a lot more high level as opposed to what's happening on a micro level on a daily basis. So you're just making sure that they always have something to look forward to. So that's kind of what onboarding can look like, right? Don't overcomplicate it. All you're trying to do is to make sure that they're clear and confident about what needs to do next. If that's your thought process when you're designing your onboarding, then you can't really go wrong. So next, right, we have the roadmap and monthly reviews. So what I like to do is just right from the get-go, figure out when they're free at the same time every week and just get that on the calendar, okay? Once a month, you just meet up for an hour so you can discuss their progress, their goals, and make sure that everything is still aligned with what they want to do and what they need to do. So when they first come on board, it's always good to just map out the first 3 months at least. Okay, you don't want to go too far in advance unless it's something like very specific, like maybe they have like a wedding or something. And you can get all this data on their onboarding survey questions, right? The onboarding survey, it's more like, yeah, you're trying to figure out, okay, what dietary requirements do they have? What injuries do they have? But really, the main benefit to the onboarding survey is for you to acquire all their motivational drivers that are actually going to keep them pushing through the program, and to set expectations about what it takes to get there. You need to have questions that relate to ownership, accountability, so that the expectation is that, ultimately they're the one who decides whether this actually happens or not. Yes, you're there to guide them, but ultimately it's down to them, and they need to know this right from the get-go. If you don't set expectations clearly, they'll start to blame you. They'll start to feel like they don't need you anymore. So by you just given them the frame of mind to succeed right from the start, your job as a coach is going to be far easier. So each month you'll have some sort of timeline, okay? Now you can do this in like Google Sheets, but most of these training apps have like a phases like section, a roadmap section, whatever you want to call it, which would look something like this. This is what it looks in one fit. So obviously we've got January there. So someone who's come on board at the start of the year, right? New year, new me, all that good stuff. And then what they've done is they've just mapped out like it's more like 4 months, almost 5 months. Can't really go wrong. Like a lot of this stuff will change, but a lot of it will be like events, right? Upcoming events, things that they want to feel good about themselves. So, if you're always reminding them of these things, then what you can do is you can then map their journey, okay? You can split that into phases, okay? We're going to do a 6-week sprint where fat loss is going to be a bit more aggressive, but don't worry, because then after that point, we're going to have like a 2-week maintenance phase, right? Where we just get your body and things back to normal. And then it breaks it down into smaller, more manageable chunks, where it's like the fear of thinking, oh, fuck, like I'm going to be just on low calories and cardio for like 5 months straight. That's a bit scary. That's a bit intimidating. So we're using their events, their goals, right? And then we're creating mini phases to get them through it, because, yeah, you could just put them on low calories and fucking a fuck ton of cardio, but is that going to make them adhere to the plan for the whole time? No, you've got to be able to manage that as a coach. You're going to have peaks and troughs. So it's about you realizing, okay, if we push for 6 weeks or 12 weeks, by the end of that, are they likely to be in a better position, or will I burn them out? Whereas if you reduce it a little bit, let's do a 6-week sprint, then let's give them a little break, and then let's analyze the situation and then go from there. So it's just about you using your brain and your expertise and showing them and explaining why you're doing things like this, right? So now all of a sudden, this big goal feels more manageable because they have little checkpoints to get to, right? So it's going to be easier for them to lock in and adhere to it. So then we've got the check-in portion, right? This is what's happening on a weekly basis. So during the onboarding, you should assign them a check-in day. And Monday is great. So let's say Sunday, right? And then what you do as a coach is you do all the check-ins all at once on a Monday. Super efficient, super scalable. And then it just means you can go back to doing things that are actually going to grow the business, such as content and things like that. And really what the purpose of a check-in is 3 things. 1 is to monitor progress. 2 is to give feedback on that and any adjustments that need to occur. And then the 3rd is for you to anticipate what's ahead. Because really, one of the big things about you managing clients is always being a few steps ahead about any little obstacles that might pop up. Because if you're not acquiring this information, they're going to have all kinds of things pop up that might get in the way of their progress. It could be something as simple as, I've got, a family meal coming up where there's going to be a lot of alcohol and a lot of unhealthy food. By you knowing this in ahead, then it means not only can you keep them accountable and maybe give them a little bit more attention to get them through that obstacle, but you might be able to tweak things earlier on in the week to make the damage of said obstacle not as bad as it would have been had you not known about it in the first place. So when you're monitoring progress, you're just looking for trends. You're identifying what's working and what's not working. And you're using this data to validate if the plan is effective or not. Because when someone comes on board for the first time, you don't really have a good idea of how their body works yet. So yes, you can make them an initial plan, but ultimately it is just a hypothesis until you get real data to really see what the deal is. So you might assign them a certain amount of calories and find that the rate of loss is not where it needs to be for you to get them to this wedding or this event in the time frame that you have. And also you're trying to spot early signs of stagnation or drop off. This is super important as well. So you might notice some trends or patterns where their adherence to what you need them to do is starting to slip a little bit. And you can just catch that before it becomes an actual problem. Because no one's perfect, right? We've got to remember that. You're not trying to criticize every little thing. You're just trying to spot trends, understand why that trend is happening, and then see if you can help them navigate it. That's it. You're just there to guide them, not criticize them all the time. And then give feedback. So obviously, we need to manage their mental state, right? You need to reinforce good behaviors that are driving results. You need to highlight gaps between the plan and the execution, but it's not your job to emphasize pain points here, right? You need to come to the table with a solution, because everyone's lifestyle is different, okay? And, no one wants to completely sacrifice their lifestyle to get in shape, right? As much as you as a coach would love for them to do that, it's not really realistic for the average person unless you're coaching bodybuilders who are insanely dedicated, who have no problem going to the gym, sacrificing alcohol, meals out and all that thing. Most people are going to be lifestyle coaching. So all you're trying to do is just navigate these peaks and troughs, all right, so that the overall trajectory of their progress is where it needs to be, the average. And if things are difficult or they're struggling to adhere to stuff, then it's your job to simplify that, right? If they're already overwhelmed and things aren't working, then you have to shift it. You have to simplify even more. Sometimes you might even need to revert back to literally the bare minimum just to keep them on a good path, which is fine. Everyone goes through different things, ups and downs, all this sort of stuff. And then what you're doing is you're turning data, because they're not going to know what to do if X, Y, and Z isn't in a good place. So it's your job to turn their inputs, their data, into a clear and actionable game plan, right? That makes the most sense based on where they're at and where it is that you're looking to go. And then third, anticipate what's ahead. So identify upcoming challenges, as I said, adjust the plan if needed to maintain adherence, set realistic expectations for the week, and remove any friction before it becomes a problem. So if you're good at this, you will anticipate problems that are sort of in the early stages of becoming a bigger problem. And what you need to do is you just need to cut that out straight away, because the longer something goes on, the harder it'll be for them to then recover from it. So how long should this take? Review, looking at your CRM, which is this here, right? Going through each person, right? So you select someone, you review the data, 5 minutes. You might make updates here. So you might want to make some more notes, things like that, adjust their risk level. And then simply 5 minutes to deliver the video, to actually show them what you've seen. So let's kind of go into this a bit deeper. So reviewing the data. Now, it can go very deep, and you just need to figure out, based on the transformation that you're serving to people, what are the important factors here? Usually, it's a combination of training, nutrition, activity, and then like data that's more feeling based, right? Which is like hunger, stress, sleep, all that sort of stuff. So you want to know what their movement is like. You want to know what they're putting into their body in terms of the figures, the data, right? You don't have to know every little piece of food, but you just need to know roughly what the calories and macros are looking like in the meal composition. Training, right? Sessions completed. You want to have a good finger on the pulse of progress, because if you don't monitor training, people will naturally, without even realizing it, slip into habits of kind of just going through the motions, right? I'm guilty of it myself, right? Like if I've got other priorities or things to think about, it's quite easy just to kind of slip into just going through the motions, thinking about other stuff while you're in the gym, and not really pushing every single set to like get more reps and things like that. So it's just something you need to be aware of. Like if you see that the training progress is not changing on a week-to-week basis, then it's your job to figure out why that is. Is it a case of what I just said, where they're just not really paying attention to it, and maybe they just need to lock in a bit more and make it more of a focus for the next week to get into a groove of it? Or is it a case of maybe they're not fueling themselves right for the workouts? Strength is literally starting to become a bit of a bottleneck, and they're struggling to progress even though they're trying very hard. Like, what tweaks can you make to give them a better opportunity to keep gaining strength in the gym? And then obviously you've got like progress pictures and stuff like that. They need to know how to do progress pictures. You know how it is with the weight, scale weight. It's up and down, right? Water weight, there's so many factors that go into it. But oftentimes, even though their weight goes up a little bit, sometimes you can actually see the difference between the progress pictures, that they're actually looking better than they did last week. So it'd be easy for a client to make emotional decisions about, what they need to do. And that's why you need to be there. You need to be their rock who looks at the data, who has experience and knows these things, so that you can then say, well, look, we're not going to make any rational decisions unless it's been a solid 2 weeks and the data suggests that the plan we have in place right now is not where it needs to be for you to keep progressing. And then often what will happen is, if you just give it 2 weeks, all this sort of accumulated inflammation, the buildup of stress in the body can have them hold on to water weight and things like that. But beneath, they're still making the progress that they want to. So by you taking a logical approach, right, not acting on feelings or panicking, you can keep them on track, keep their head in a good place, and not make any changes that don't need to be made. Other things, like hunger levels, stress, so you can keep an eye on this sort of fatigue, the diet fatigue that's building. So, if their sleep is fucked, if their energy is low, if they're stressed, if they're really hungry, then it would be stupid for you to keep pushing them, because they're just going to hit a breaking point. And the damage of taking them to that point could fuck up their progress. So, you need to, at that point, figure out, okay, Should I add in a refeed day? Do they need a diet break? Like, it's your job to look at the data and see this sort of stuff. So typically on a check-in, they will fill out a form, something like this. So wins of the week, how do they feel like it's went in general? Picking up some data points here. What events should I know about coming up? And you're just trying to get a little pulse check of where their head's at and how they feel the weeks went. Because ultimately, you have the data here, but you just want to know what's going inside their head as well. And then obviously when you have looked at the data, then you can move on to the delivery element. And you want to just update the CRM as well. So kind of like what I said before, things to note and remember, risk status. So when it comes to risk status, it's like, okay, everyone who comes on board starts off on red, but like naturally, so you can walk them through the first 2 weeks. And then typically after that, they would go on to amber or green, right? Now, amber is more like, if they're not 100% adherent to the plan, right? There's some slip ups. It's not perfect. Maybe they miss a check-in occasionally, or they don't hit their steps. They're missing gym sessions. They still feel good and they still feel like they're in a good place, like mentally, but they're just not perfect, and it's something you need to monitor. Red after 2 weeks would be like they're expressing concerns to you. They're really struggling. They're really fucking up on their diet. They're just not checking in with you, and they could literally be like a couple of weeks away from, look, man, this is not a good time for me. I just want to put things on pause. Depending on the severity of it, you just need to make sure that you're managing where people are at. So if people are on red, that it should mean that you're talking with them daily and basically holding them hand through that rough patch. And then green, right? These are the best kind of clients, because these are the guys who just fucking do everything you tell them to do. They check in on time. They keep making progress, and they're just locked in. So these kind of people, you don't need to bother them too much. They just want to cruise. They just want to simplify. They just want to get the job done, and you don't need to babysit them. So let's go on to delivering the check-in, right? It's kind of a framework. So what went well, right? So you always want to make it a positive, reinforce good progress, even if it's small or not a big deal, right? You just need to reward good behavior, compare it to last week, highlight the wins, and then you use like an even better if frame. So highlighting the positives first, but it could be better if, and then you just highlight some possible improvements for them to look, to kind of focus on a little bit, small optimizations. And then with you reviewing what they've done, now you can sort of set some targets. So they need to be clear and actionable and simple. So you're not trying to have them win everything, right? You just want to highlight what the things that if they improved the most or gave the most attention to, that, it would massively benefit their overall adherence and all overall progress, right? And ideally, it needs to be specific numbers and behaviors so they know exactly what to focus on. So some areas, like some people might just be really good at going to the gym. It's not a problem for them. They love it. But their nutrition side of things kind of sucks. So you'd want to you'd want to simplify and have them focus on the things that actually matter to them. Engagement, right? So you just want to have them understand that, you just want them to confirm that they understand what you've told them. Okay. So have them confirm that they're clear and they don't have any questions. Have them repeat the targets to you, and also have them explain to you exactly what the game plan is in their own words, just to make sure that they're crystal clear. And then what you can do is you'll send them this on a video. And what I like to do is just summarize it in text form as well. So you send them a video and then you just summarize it in like a WhatsApp text as well, just so they can't possibly go wrong. And then it just keeps you right as well. Because if then you come back to the chat in like 5 days time, you can, have an update or see where they're at with said things and said targets. And obviously using Loom, you can simply record it like what I'm doing right now. Click stop, and then you'll get a video link that you can send them. Super simple. And just to clarify as well, the goal here is not to criticize everything and overwhelm them with information or like sound smart or Like I've seen one coach like a few months ago who was kind of bragging about the fact that his check-in videos were 10 minutes long. And I'm like, it as the video length is just a number. Like that that doesn't tell you anything about how simple you made it and how crystal clear you made everything so that they know exactly what to focus on. You're not trying to fluff it up or sound smart or like overwhelm them with shit that they don't really understand. You're trying to meet them at their level and make sure that they're crystal clear about what they have to do for the next week. You're not thinking too far ahead. You're just trying to have them win the next week. So from their point of view, simplicity wins every time. They just need to hear exactly what's necessary to keep the ball rolling. That's it. And to solve any issues or concerns that they may have. So next we have touch points. So this is the micro level. So what I like to do is block out 30 minutes daily just for you to spend time on this sheet here, see where everyone's at, see, what their notes are, maybe go back to their WhatsApp chat and see what, remind yourself of what the check-in was, see who's at risk, who needs most attention, just block out 30 minutes and basically just, prioritize the new starts, prioritize the people on red, and just make sure that they have the support they need and that their mind hasn't started to wander or negative feelings aren't creeping in. You're just trying to keep that momentum flowing, make sure that they feel supported. And, if you're actually reaching out to them and referring to their personal situation, your program could be shit, but that in itself, that level of support and care and attention to detail, oftentimes that's what keeps people around for a very long time. If you're forgetting what they say or like if it's not that personal or it feels robotic, people are they're gonna realize that and they're gonna see that. So obviously prioritizing people on red, and literally it could just be a quick voice notes, right? Just for efficiency's sake. Just review the CRM, review their last check-in notes, and just send over a quick voice note, right? And what you're doing is you're just preemptively catching problems before they occur. And you're just staying on top of everything. You're staying organized. So the traffic light system, kind of as I explained, red means daily touch points, amber means sort of 2 to 3 touch points per week, and green, I would just not bother these people. If you're trying to babysit them and hold their hand, it'll just be annoying. You might think it's beneficial, but it'll just annoy them more than anything because they don't have updates for you. Everything's fine. Just leave them to it. Just let them get on with it. And yeah, so that's kind of it. That's kind of a very simple overview of how to run your clients on the back end to make sure that it's organized, that you are getting them into the program in the best way possible, setting expectations. You're always thinking ahead so you can retain clients and make sure that you get them to stay with you for 6, 12, 18 months. And then you're checking in with them and you're giving the right support to the right people. So if you like this, give me a subscribe, like the video, let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to book a roadmap call to map out your business and to design this fully from the ground up, based on where you're at in your business, then just book a call in the link below. And yeah, we'll see you there. But yeah, until next time, see you later.